Hey, human, I crossed galaxies for this. My kid won't stop talking about wanting to meet you. Evan Cole wiped his hands on the grease-stained rag, the smell of oil and metal filling the small maintenance bay of the frontier station. The station, a minor outpost on the edge of human space, had always been quiet, almost too quiet. Most days it was just him, the hum of machinery, and the distant chatter of communications from distant colonies. But today, the air felt different. He couldn't place why, only that the usual rhythm of the station seemed off. Something was coming, something he couldn't see. He stepped out of the bay and glanced at the viewports. Beyond the glass, stars stretched endlessly, glittering in patterns that never repeated. Normally, this would calm him. He had always found comfort in the vastness, in knowing that out here, humans were small but capable. But tonight, his gut told him unease had arrived. A deep vibration ran through the station floors, subtle at first but growing stronger. The emergency lights flickered once, then stabilized. Evan frowned. He had dealt with power surges before, but this felt different. Then the communication panel lit up. The display showed an unfamiliar insignia, sharp and geometric, unlike anything human. A calm but commanding voice filled the room. "We request immediate access. This is not a threat. This is a personal matter." Evan blinked. A personal matter, coming from someone who wasn't human. He hesitated. He had worked on space stations for nearly a decade, and he had never received a message like this. The station's security chief, a gruff man named Harris, appeared behind him. "You hearing that, Cole?" he said, crossing his arms. "Sounds official, but personal." "Who sends a personal message across galaxies?" Evan shook his head. "I don't know, but something tells me we don't just ignore this." Harris grunted, clearly uncomfortable with the unknown. Within moments, a massive alien ship entered the station's orbital zone. Evan stared at it, mouth slightly open. It was taller than any human battleship he had seen, with a sleek surface that reflected starlight like liquid metal. There were no markings humans could read, only shapes and symbols that made his head spin. From the observation deck, the ship seemed almost alive, moving with a quiet grace that made human vessels feel clumsy in comparison. The communications panel activated again. "You are Evan Cole?" the voice asked, now tinged with something almost nervous. "We have crossed galaxies for this. My child will not stop speaking of you. It is imperative that we meet." Evan felt his stomach twist. His heart beat faster, a mixture of fear and disbelief. "My me?" he asked aloud. "Why me?" "You told stories," the voice replied. "Stories of courage, of humans refusing to surrender, of kindness even in the darkest times. My child has followed these tales for many cycles. We could not wait longer. We must meet you." Harris stepped closer, his hand resting on his sidearm. "Stories across galaxies. Who the hell is this kid and why does it care about you?" Evan took a deep breath. I used to make recordings, simple things, stories for my niece, my nephew, kids on the station. I never thought anyone outside would see them." He paused, trying to process what he was hearing. "And some kid across galaxies somehow saw them." "Yes," the voice said firmly, "and they have not stopped talking of you. This meeting cannot be delayed." The station went into lockdown automatically, a precaution triggered by the arrival of an unknown alien vessel. Security forces moved to control access points, but none dared to interfere with the communication. Evan was escorted to the docking bay. As he walked, he noticed the station crew's faces: fear, awe, and a strange kind of anticipation. Even Harris seemed less certain, his usual confidence faltering as he realized the magnitude of the situation. The airlock opened with a hiss, revealing a passage connecting the station to the alien ship. Evan hesitated. He had crossed airlocks for maintenance and repairs, sure, but this was different. The path ahead wasn't just metal and machinery, it was a bridge to something entirely unknown. He stepped forward, feeling the weight of history pressing down. Inside, the ship was vast. Light moved in strange patterns, not from bulbs but from the walls themselves, pulsing softly like living veins. Shapes floated in the distance, almost like sculptures but moving with purpose. Evan realized the ship was more than transport. It was a message, a statement, a home for a civilization completely unlike humanity. A figure emerged, smaller than Evan expected for an alien diplomat, but undeniably alien. Its skin shimmered faintly under the light, and its eyes held a depth he couldn't read. And beside it, holding onto its hand, was the child. Small, curious, and utterly fascinated. The moment their eyes met, Evan felt a jolt he couldn't explain. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a connection across species, across the impossibly vast distance of the galaxy. The child stepped forward cautiously, looking up at him with a mixture of wonder and excitement. "Are you really human?" it asked, voice soft, almost trembling. "I am," Evan replied, forcing a smile. He didn't know how else to respond. The alien adult, presumably the parent, gestured toward him. "This is the one who told the stories. You must understand, the tales were not meant for us, but they reached my child. They inspired questions, ideas that have shaken our home. We had no choice but to come." Evan swallowed hard. "Questions?" "Yes," the child said, stepping closer. "Why do you help others even when it's dangerous? Why do you keep trying when it seems impossible? Why don't you give up?" The questions hit Evan in ways he hadn't expected. He looked at the child's wide, bright eyes and saw a reflection of something universal, a longing for understanding, a desire to see the world differently. He thought of the stories he had told, simple accounts of humans helping each other, of small victories against impossible odds. Those stories had been personal, intimate, never meant to ripple across galaxies. And yet here they were, shaping the mind of an alien child. You have a lot to ask," Evan said slowly, "and I don't know if I can answer all of them, but I can try." The alien adult nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. "That is all we ask, try." For hours, Evan shared his tales. He spoke of humans who refused to surrender, who risked everything to save one another. He spoke of laughter in the face of despair, courage in moments of fear, and kindness in worlds that often seemed cruel. The child listened, rapt, and occasionally interrupting with a question or exclamation. Evan noticed the alien adult watching with a mix of awe and concern, as if realizing the implications of what these stories could mean for their society. By the time Evan finished, exhaustion weighed on him, but so did a strange sense of accomplishment. He had never imagined that the stories he told on a whim for a few children in a small human outpost could travel across galaxies and affect a young mind in a civilization so different from his own. The child smiled up at him, eyes bright and shining. I understand now," it said simply. "Humans are amazing." Evan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "We're just us, trying our best, that's all." The alien adult bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that felt formal yet genuine. "You have given my child a gift, one that cannot be measured. We will return to our home, but know this: humans have begun to reach beyond what we thought possible. Your actions, your stories, have made the impossible real for someone else. That is a power few realize they possess." As Evan walked back to the station, escorted by Harris and security, he felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The station, quiet once again, seemed almost different. Small, ordinary humans like him could touch the lives of others in ways no one anticipated. He realized that courage, empathy, and simple stories could travel further than ships or armies. They could cross galaxies. Later, as he returned to his quarters, Evan sat at his desk and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, a child was thinking about him, inspired, full of questions that could change worlds. He smiled softly. Humans were often underestimated, dismissed as weak or insignificant. Yet here he was, a single human across galaxies, shaping minds and ideas. And he understood something profoundly simple. Sometimes the greatest power a human possessed was the ability to believe, to care, and to share that belief with others. The stars didn't seem so distant anymore. They were connected, like threads in a web, each one holding the potential to carry human stories, human hope, and human resilience. Evan closed his eyes, letting the hum of the station lull him into a tired but contented silence. The galaxy was vast, uncertain, and dangerous, but it also listened. And now, thanks to a simple story, it was listening to humans in a way it never had before. The alien ship moved silently through the void, gliding between distant stars with a grace that made Evan's human-built vessels seem clumsy in comparison. He walked through the wide corridors, trying to make sense of the ship's strange design. The walls seemed alive, pulsing faintly with light, responding to his presence as if the ship itself was aware of him. Every step he took echoed softly, not like metal on metal, but like walking on the surface of some enormous living creature. The child walked beside him, small and curious, its gaze flicking to every light and surface. "Do humans always travel in such tiny ships?" it asked, tilting its head. Evan chuckled, adjusting the strap of his tool belt. "Well, we build what we can, what we need." Space is expensive, and our ships are practical, not beautiful. The child's large eyes widened. Beautiful? You think practical is beautiful? Evan shrugged. Sometimes it is, when it works. The alien adult, walking slightly ahead, glanced over its shoulder at him. Your stories were simple, yet my child understood them in ways we did not anticipate. They began to ask questions, questions we have struggled to answer ourselves. It unsettled our society. Evan raised an eyebrow. Unsettled? You mean in a bad way? The adult's tone softened. Perhaps our younglings are expected to obey and follow the guidance of elders. Questioning is not encouraged. Yet your tales presented a world where perseverance and moral choices mattered more than obedience. My child began to wonder why our people do not act similarly. Evan felt a shiver. He had never imagined that his small stories, meant for a handful of children on a remote station, could influence an alien society. And you're telling me this because... Because, the adult said, pausing as it considered words carefully, you must see the gravity of the situation. My child's curiosity could change us, possibly forever, and we need guidance from you. Evan swallowed hard. Me? Guidance? I'm a maintenance worker. I fix things, I tell stories, that's all. Sometimes, the adult said softly, that is enough. The child tugged at Evan's sleeve, its eyes earnest. Tell me more stories about humans, about how you survive when things seem impossible. Evan looked down at the child, at the innocence and fascination in its gaze. He realized then that the child wasn't just curious. It was searching for something, trying to understand a world so different from its own. And he knew that the stories he shared might be the only connection it had to hope, courage, and resilience. He led them to a quiet chamber on the ship, a room that seemed designed for conversation and learning. The walls shimmered with soft light, and strange symbols moved across the surface, forming patterns that seemed to reflect emotions rather than language. Evan felt a sense of calm settle over him as he sat down, the child immediately following. Humans, he began, have always faced impossible odds. Every colony, every settlement, every station you see out there, someone had to fight to make it survive. Sometimes it was tools, sometimes it was luck, and sometimes it was just the will to keep going. The child tilted its head. But isn't it easier to give up, to follow orders like we do? Evan shook his head. Not for humans. We fail, sure, we fall, but we try again because giving up, that's the easy way out. We want to see what happens if we don't quit. And often something incredible happens, even if we never expected it. The alien adult watched silently, but Evan could feel its tension. Every sentence he spoke seemed to ripple through the ship, reaching far beyond their chamber. He realized that the adult was not just observing the conversation. It was monitoring the impact, weighing the consequences of letting their child hear these ideas. The child leaned closer. So humans just keep going, even when everything seems hopeless? Yes, Evan said. Even then, sometimes we help others when it's dangerous because we know it's the right thing to do. Sometimes we sacrifice what we want for someone else, even if it costs us. And sometimes we just refuse to stop learning, even when everyone else thinks we can't succeed. The child's eyes sparkled, reflecting a mixture of awe and disbelief. Why do you care so much? Evan paused. He thought about it. Because we understand that life is short and we only get one chance at it. Helping others, standing up for what's right, trying even when it's hard, it makes life meaningful. It's not about glory or power. It's about making a difference, however small it might be. The child was silent for a long moment, digesting his words. Evan could feel the weight of its thoughts pressing against him. He realized that it wasn't just curiosity, it was a spark of change, a seed that could grow into something that might challenge an entire civilization. Finally, the child spoke. I want to do that. I want to make a difference like humans do, but what if they don't let me? Evan smiled softly, a mixture of pride and caution in his gaze. Then you find a way anyway. You find allies, you learn, you grow stronger. And you never stop believing that what's right matters more than what's easy. The alien adult's voice, quiet but firm, broke the silence. Do you understand, human? You are teaching my child to question, to defy the rules we have held for centuries. Your simple stories carry weight that is unimaginable. Evan leaned back, exhaustion creeping in from the day's events, but a strange sense of purpose filled him. I didn't mean to. I just told stories, but if they help, if they inspire, then maybe that's enough. The child leaned against him, small and eager, asking more questions. About courage, about failure, about kindness, and about humanity's ability to survive against impossible odds. Evan answered each one, drawing from his experiences and the tales he had shared with children back home. With every answer, he realized that the child was learning more than facts or tactics. It was learning human values, the essence of why humans endured against threats that seemed insurmountable. Hours passed, and the alien adult eventually gestured for them to take a break. Evan leaned back in the chair, rubbing his eyes. He had expected fatigue, but what he felt was something heavier, a weight of responsibility. These stories, simple and unassuming as they were changing an entire mind in a civilization far larger and older than humanity. The child sat silently beside him, watching the stars outside the ship's viewports. "Evan," it said finally, "do all humans believe this way?" He shook his head. "Not all, some do, some don't, but we all have the capacity to care, to try, and to make choices that matter. That's what makes humans humans." The child's gaze softened, as if understanding something profound for the first time. "I want to be like that. I want to see the galaxy like humans do, with hope and courage." Evan smiled faintly. "Then you already are in your own way. You're asking questions, you're learning, that's the first step." The alien adult approached, its expression unreadable. "We must return soon, but know this, Evan Cole, the influence you have imparted cannot be undone. My child will continue to ask, to challenge, to question. It may cause disruption in ways we cannot yet foresee, but it is enlightening. Your kind has introduced concepts we did not know existed." Evan nodded slowly, feeling the magnitude of what he had begun to understand. Humans were small in the vast galaxy, but the ideas they carried, their courage, empathy, and relentless will, were far larger than any weapon or fleet. One simple story, shared across light years, could change the course of a civilization. As the ship began to slow, preparing for its journey back to the alien homeworld, Evan stood with the child and the adult on the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly around them, distant suns and planets gleaming like scattered jewels. Evan realized that despite the vastness, despite the unknowns, there was a connection, a thread linking human and alien experiences. The child looked up at him, eyes wide and shining. "Will you tell me more next time?" Evan chuckled softly. "Of course. There's always more to tell." The alien adult placed a hand on the child's shoulder, a gesture of quiet understanding. "We will return, and when we do, your stories, your lessons, they will continue to guide. You have shown that even the smallest human actions can echo across the stars." Evan nodded, feeling a sense of calm resolve. He had started with stories meant for children in a tiny station at the edge of human space. He never imagined they would travel across galaxies, touch another species, and plant seeds of change. Yet here he was, a small human with small stories, wielding an influence that was quietly extraordinary. As the alien ship began to fade into the distance, Evan looked at the stars, feeling the vast weight of possibility pressing down on him. Somewhere, the child would continue to question, to wonder, and to learn. And through it all, humanity's values, its courage, empathy, and unyielding will, would continue to ripple outward, shaping minds in ways he could never fully understand. Evan returned to his quarters aboard the station, exhausted yet exhilarated. He sat at his desk, staring at the same stars that now carried his stories farther than he ever imagined. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknowns, dangers, and wonders, but it was listening. And humans, with their stories and their resilience, had found a way to speak across that vastness, one question at a time. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes, feeling the quiet hum of the station around him. A single thought ran through his mind, simple yet profound. Sometimes the smallest actions could echo across the stars, shaping civilizations, one curious mind at a time. And somewhere far away, a child continued to think, to ask, and to imagine. A human story had begun to live beyond its origins, a spark that could ignite change in ways the galaxy had never seen before. Evan had returned to his routine aboard the frontier station, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. The alien child's questions lingered in his mind, and even the hum of the machinery sounded different, as if the station itself had shifted to a higher frequency. He tried to focus on maintenance work, tightening panels, checking energy conduits, and recalibrating systems, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the encounter. The idea that stories, simple stories, could ripple across galaxies still seemed impossible. Yet he had seen it with his own eyes. News arrived quietly over the station's communication network. Reports from nearby colonies indicated strange activity within the alien civilization. Ships that had followed strict routines suddenly deviated from orders. Young aliens were questioning older authority, discussing ideas that had previously been forbidden. A ripple of unrest, subtle but unmistakable, had begun. Evan's jaw tightened. He hadn't realized the full extent of the impact his stories might have. Harris stormed into the maintenance bay, carrying a tablet with reports. "Cole, have you seen this?" he asked, his tone a mixture of alarm and disbelief. "The aliens, they're changing. Their younglings are acting different. They're questioning, debating, even disobeying orders." Evan leaned against the wall, running a hand through his hair. "I told stories, that's all. I didn't think it would, this." Harris shook his head. "Don't underestimate it. These people have rules older than human history. If your stories caused this much, it's bigger than you think, and the galaxy is watching now." Evan's heart sank, but curiosity pushed him forward. He wanted to understand the consequences of what had begun. "Then we need to know how far it's spreading," he said quietly. "If the child influenced others, we need to see the full picture." Within hours, the alien ship returned, silently docking at the station once again. Evan was escorted aboard, unsure what to expect. The corridors, familiar now, seemed even more alive. Pulsing lights reflected emotions rather than logic, moving in patterns that spoke of awareness. The child ran toward him, eyes wide with excitement. "Evan, they're asking more questions, and not just me. Others want to know why humans act the way you do." Evan smiled faintly, but a shadow of concern crossed his face. "Others? How many?" The alien adult approached, calm but tense. "We cannot measure the full extent yet, but the influence is growing. Our youth are gathering in secret, discussing your stories, your human concepts. They are questioning the foundations of our society." The child's voice trembled with excitement. "They're asking about courage, kindness, and hope. They want to know how humans survive impossible situations." Evan realized then that he had inadvertently sparked a revolution of thought, small yet potent. He thought of the stories he told. Humans helping one another despite danger, fighting for what was right even when failure seemed certain, refusing to surrender. Simple ideas for humans, but apparently revolutionary for this alien civilization. The adult gestured toward a central chamber, where a projection displayed vast networks of young aliens communicating in real time. Evan watched, fascinated, as thousands of holographic figures moved, debating, questioning, and learning. His stories, once tiny whispers on a human station, had ignited curiosity on an unimaginable scale. Evan took a deep breath. "So, what happens now?" The adult's expression hardened slightly. "We do not know, we cannot control what has begun. Our society was built on order and obedience, but now questions have taken root. We cannot stop them without appearing tyrannical. This could change everything." The child looked at him eagerly. "Evan, what do we do? How do we help them understand?" He hesitated. "You don't push, you show. You answer honestly when asked, and you let them see the value of courage, kindness, and perseverance in action. That's how humans do it. That's how we survive and inspire each other." The child nodded slowly, absorbing the words. "Then I'll try. I'll share what you told me, but what if they don't listen?" Evan smiled, a quiet confidence in his voice. "Then you try again. Humans never give up after the first attempt, and neither should you. The important part is that you keep asking, keep showing, and keep learning. That's how change begins." The alien adult sighed, almost imperceptibly. "It seems your influence is far beyond what we anticipated. The galaxy may take notice soon. We did not expect a single human's stories to carry such power. You are remarkable, though not by your own design." Evan shook his head. "I'm not remarkable. I just tell stories, but if they help, if they inspire, then that's enough." Over the next days, Evan accompanied the child through the ship, observing secret gatherings of young aliens. They asked questions he never thought of answering, like why humans value life so deeply, why they risk themselves for strangers, and why failure is seen as part of growth rather than shame. Evan answered with patience, drawing from human history, personal experience, and simple moral lessons. He saw the effects immediately. The young aliens began testing their ideas in small ways, defying minor orders to help one another, protecting weaker peers, experimenting with cooperation rather than blind adherence to protocol. The ripple grew, subtle yet undeniable. Even some adults, quietly observing, began reconsidering their rigid norms. Humanity, in its simple, enduring way, was changing minds across the galaxy. One evening, Evan sat with the child in a quiet observation room, looking at a nearby nebula glowing with colors beyond human imagination. "Evan," the child said softly, "they're starting to think like humans. They're asking if they should be braver, kinder, more honest with each other." He nodded, touched by the words. "Sometimes that's all it takes. One idea, one question, one small action. It spreads faster than violence, faster than orders, and it lasts longer too." The child's eyes widened. "Do you think maybe one day they could change completely, be more like humans?" Evan thought about it, the enormity of the question pressing against him. "I don't know, maybe, but it doesn't matter if they become exactly like humans. The important thing is that they're learning to care, to think, and to try. That's the power of being human, the courage to act even when it's hard." The adult approached them again, voice calm but heavy with concern. "We must prepare to return home. But be warned, your influence has consequences. Not all in our society will welcome this change. Some may resist aggressively, others may fear it. You have sparked a movement, one that could destabilize centuries of order." Evan nodded, understanding the gravity of his position. He was not a soldier, not a diplomat, not a leader. He was just a human telling stories. And yet in that simplicity, he had created a force more powerful than many fleets or armies. Humanity's strength lay not in weapons, but in ideas, in empathy, in perseverance. As they prepared to leave the observation room, Evan turned to the child. "Remember, you don't need to fight with anger or weapons. You guide by showing what's right. You answer questions and you keep trying. That's what humans do." The child smiled, small and determined. "I will, Evan. I promise." The ship left the station silently, gliding through the stars as if the galaxy itself were holding its breath. Evan returned to his quarters, feeling the weight of what had begun. The galaxy was changing, not through conquest or politics, but through ideas and courage carried by one human and one curious child. For the next several days, Evan monitored reports from nearby colonies. Young aliens continued to question their elders, forming small communities dedicated to learning and cooperation. Even some adults began supporting them quietly, intrigued by the promise of a society guided by curiosity and morality rather than strict obedience. Evan realized that this subtle revolution had no leader, no army, no flag, but it was spreading faster than anything he had ever imagined. Harris appeared again, leaning against the doorframe of the maintenance bay. "Cole, this is bigger than we thought. You didn't just tell stories, you started a movement across an alien empire. That's insane." Evan chuckled, rubbing his temples. "It doesn't feel insane, it feels right. Humans survive because we care, because we try, because we keep going. And maybe, just maybe, that's contagious." Harris shook his head, half in disbelief, half in admiration. "Contagious, huh? Never thought I'd see the day humans infect an alien civilization with hope." Evan smiled faintly, thinking of the child and the thousands of young aliens beginning to question, to think, to act. Humanity's power, he realized, was not in fear or force, but in example. A story, a question, a simple act of courage could resonate across light years, shaping civilizations without firing a single weapon. Late at night, as the station's hum settled into quiet, Evan sat by a viewport, staring into the stars. Somewhere out there, the child was continuing to share what he had taught, asking questions that could alter the course of a society. The ripple of influence was unstoppable, and Evan felt both awe and responsibility. He whispered to himself, almost as if addressing the galaxy directly, "We may be small, but we endure. We may seem insignificant, but our ideas, they last. Our courage, our kindness, our will to keep trying, that's what makes us human. And it seems the universe is listening." As he leaned back, letting the stars wash over him, Evan knew the journey had only just begun. The alien civilization was shifting, subtly but irreversibly. Humans had not sent armies or weapons, they had sent stories. And those stories, carried by the curiosity and courage of one child, had begun to change the galaxy. Evan closed his eyes, heart heavy but full. He didn't know what would happen next, but he did know one thing: humans would endure, humans would inspire. And humans, in their quiet, persistent way, could change worlds, not with force, but with courage, empathy, and the willingness to never stop trying. Evan had hoped that the influence of his stories would be met with curiosity alone, But the galaxy rarely allowed change without resistance. Reports arrived from the alien civilization that troubled him. Small pockets of the younglings, inspired by human values, were being confronted by adults who clung to tradition. Orders were ignored, debates flared, and confusion spread through the ranks. What had begun as quiet questioning now threatened to divide entire communities. The alien adult and the child returned to the station unexpectedly, their presence urgent. Evan met them at the docking bay, sensing tension in every movement. The child ran toward him first, excitement replaced by unease. Evan, they're trying to stop us. They don't understand. They say humans are dangerous because you teach ideas that break rules. Evan frowned. They can't understand. Why would questioning be dangerous? The adult's voice was heavy. Because our society values obedience above all else. Your stories inspire thought, choice, and courage. That is considered rebellion. Some are already calling for punishment, not of the child, but of all who follow these ideas. Evan's stomach sank. He had never meant to start a revolt. He had simply told stories, shared lessons about courage, kindness, and perseverance. And yet here he was in the middle of a crisis across galaxies. He took a deep breath. Then we have to show them the right way, not with force, but with action, with reason. With proof that human values, our way can strengthen, not weaken, a society. The child looked up at him with wide eyes. How can we show them? Evan led them to the ship's central command room, a place filled with holographic maps, simulations, and data streams. The walls pulsed softly, reflecting the rising tension within the alien civilization. He pointed to a simulation showing an energy distribution problem threatening several colonies. This is an opportunity, Evan explained. Humans don't always have the strongest tools or the biggest fleets, but we solve problems by thinking creatively and working together. Let's apply that here. The child nodded eagerly, understanding instantly. We can help them, Evan smiled faintly. Exactly. Show them what humans do. Over the next hours, they worked tirelessly. Evan instructed the younglings to coordinate repairs, reroute energy flows, and establish safer communication links between the colonies. They applied basic human problem-solving methods, trial and error, teamwork, and persistence. Every small success inspired confidence, proving that courage and intelligence, rather than blind obedience, could solve real problems. Word spread quickly among the alien adults. Some were skeptical, accusing the younglings of foolishness and disobedience. Others watched quietly, curiosity warring with tradition. Slowly, cracks appeared in the rigid structure of authority. Those who had resisted the human influence began to see its value, not as a threat, but as a tool. One evening, Evan sat with the child in the observation room, watching the nebulae swirl outside. Evan, the child said, voice trembling slightly, some adults still don't accept this. They say humans are dangerous because you teach ideas that challenge everything. He nodded. Some will always resist change. Humans face the same problem. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting even when you are afraid. You can't force people to change, but you can show them the way. The child thought about it, eyes bright with determination. Then we keep showing them? Yes, Evan said firmly. We keep showing them. And we never give up. Meanwhile, the alien adult communicated with distant leaders, reporting the successes and failures of the younglings. The adult's words carried weight, but it was clear that not everyone agreed. Some officials demanded strict measures to reassert control, while others quietly observed, realizing the potential of these new ideas. The tension escalated into debates that threatened to fracture the alien political system. Evan realized the stakes were higher than ever. He had to act carefully, balancing influence with caution. A wrong word or action could trigger conflict, undoing everything they had begun. Yet inaction was not an option. He turned to the child. We need to think like humans think strategically. Not with anger, but with reason. Show results, help others, solve problems. That's how humans lead without armies. The child nodded, a serious expression settling over its features. Then let's do it. Together, they worked through simulations of the alien colonies, predicting potential crises and developing solutions. They applied human methods, collaboration, communication, and persistence. Slowly, the adult skeptics began to notice. The younglings were not reckless, they were effective. Their actions stabilized energy networks, prevented accidents, and even helped older officials see possibilities they had never considered. Evan felt a surge of pride. Humanity's influence was subtle but undeniable. Courage, kindness, and ingenuity, the qualities humans often took for granted, were proving their worth across light years. One day, a crisis erupted. A critical energy conduit failed in a distant colony, threatening millions. Panic spread, and the adult authorities demanded immediate obedience to traditional protocols. The child, remembering Evan's lessons, rallied the younglings. "We can do this the human way," it said. "We solve problems together, we don't wait for fear to dictate action." Evan guided them calmly. "Work together, communicate, and trust your judgment. Don't be afraid to try even if you fail." The younglings coordinated repairs, rerouted power, and managed to stabilize the colony. When the adults witnessed the outcome, shock replaced skepticism. They had underestimated the potential of curiosity, courage, and human-style problem-solving. The alien adult approached Evan later, its expression unreadable. "You have done more than we anticipated. Your influence has guided our younglings to success where tradition would have failed. But beware, some will resist this change more fiercely. Not all are impressed by results." Evan nodded, feeling the weight of the warning. "I understand. Humans face resistance, too. We don't always win over everyone at once, but we keep trying and we let our actions speak louder than words." The child ran up, eyes shining. "Evan, they listened, they saw we can do it, they didn't punish us." Evan smiled, ruffling its hair. "That's right. Showing what's possible matters more than arguing. Humans prove ideas through action, not force." In the following days, Evan continued guiding the child and the younglings. Every successful project, every life saved, and every small victory reinforced the power of human values. Slowly, adults who had been most resistant began to consider the possibilities. They did not change entirely, but cracks appeared in the rigid hierarchy. The alien society was beginning to see that courage, kindness, and ingenuity could coexist with order and tradition. Harris visited Evan in his quarters, shaking his head in disbelief. "I can't believe this. Your stories, your lessons, they're changing an entire civilization, and not through fear or force, but through simple human ideas." Evan shrugged, exhaustion and pride mingling. "Humans survive because we care, we act, and we never stop trying. That's what I've always believed, and it seems the galaxy is noticing." Late one night, Evan looked at the stars outside his viewport, thinking about the child and the younglings who had embraced human values. Their society was shifting, slowly and subtly, but undeniably. Fear, obedience, and rigid rules were giving way to curiosity, courage, and collaboration. Humanity's influence had reached farther than he had ever imagined. He whispered to himself, quiet but firm, "Humans endure. We inspire, and sometimes the smallest acts, stories, lessons, courage can ripple across galaxies, shaping minds and societies in ways we never expect." The child appeared at his side, eyes wide and bright. "Evan, do you think they'll change completely?" He shook his head gently. "Not completely, but they're learning to think, to care, and to act. That's the important part. Change doesn't happen all at once, but it begins with a spark. And you are that spark." The child beamed, determination settling into its expression. "Then I'll keep trying. I'll show them what humans can do." Evan smiled faintly, feeling the weight of hope and responsibility. Humanity had begun to leave a mark not through conquest, but through courage, empathy, and the will to keep moving forward. And now, across light years, that mark was beginning to shape another civilization, teaching them that bravery and kindness were far more powerful than fear or obedience. As he returned to his quarters, Evan knew that resistance would continue, that not all would accept this change willingly. But he also knew that human values, once introduced, were difficult to erase. Curiosity, courage, and empathy had taken root, and no decree or punishment could fully destroy them. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the stars, and felt a quiet satisfaction. The galaxy was changing, not through fleets or battles, but through the quiet, enduring power of human stories. He had never imagined that being human could be so influential, so transformative, and yet, here it was, proof that courage, kindness, and persistence could cross galaxies and leave lasting marks. Somewhere far away, young aliens continued to ask questions, to solve problems, and to act with courage and empathy. And in every small success, every life saved, and every mind opened, Evan saw the truth. Humans endure, humans inspire, and humans, in their quiet, persistent way, can change worlds. Evan watched the stars through the viewport of the alien ship, feeling a quiet tension in the air. The younglings he had guided were now more than just curious. They had become leaders among their peers. They organized, helped, and challenged old conventions, applying human lessons of courage, kindness, and persistence. Yet resistance remained. Some adult factions still resisted the changes, fearful of a society where questions could outweigh orders. The child approached him, holding a small data tablet. "Evan," it said, voice urgent but controlled. "They're planning something. The resistant factions, they want to stop the younglings. They think humans are dangerous. They don't see that we can make things better." Evan's brow furrowed. "Then we have to act wisely. You've already proven that you can inspire and guide others, but now the challenge is bigger. You need to show them results they cannot ignore." The alien adult nodded gravely. "This may be the decisive moment. Either the resistant faction gains power or the younglings' ideas spread permanently. Your presence, human, is a symbol, but their actions must prove the value of change, not fear." Evan took a deep breath. "Then we make the impossible possible. That's what humans do. We act, we solve, and we inspire by doing, not arguing." A crisis erupted shortly after. A massive energy imbalance threatened the main colonies, risking life support, communication networks, and vital resources. Panic spread quickly among the adult officials, and orders were shouted for strict adherence to traditional protocols. "Deviate and you will be punished. Follow orders and maybe nothing survives." Evan turned to the child. "This is your moment. Guide them, show them what humans do." The child looked determined. "We can't fail." Working alongside Evan, the younglings coordinated a human-style response. They broke from rigid routines, combining logic with creativity, improvising solutions that respected the lives of the people at risk. They coordinated teams, reassigned resources, and risked themselves to stabilize failing systems. Every action reflected the lessons Evan had shared: courage in uncertainty, empathy in decision-making, and relentless persistence in problem-solving. The resistant adults watched closely, fear and disbelief in their eyes. They expected chaos, failure, and disobedience, but what they saw was efficiency, cooperation, and success. The human methods they had scorned were saving lives. Slowly, they began to reconsider their assumptions. The old rules, the strict obedience, were not the only way to protect the colony. Hours passed, tension mounting as the energy systems teetered on the edge. Evan stayed calm, guiding the child and younglings with quiet encouragement. "Trust your judgment. Help each other. Think carefully, act bravely. That's what humans do." Finally, the crisis was resolved. The colonies were stabilized, the energy flows corrected, and no lives were lost. The younglings' success was undeniable, a demonstration of courage and ingenuity that could not be ignored. Even the most skeptical adults had to acknowledge it. The rigid hierarchy began to shift, not through force, but through the undeniable proof that human values worked. The alien adult approached Evan afterward. Its expression was unreadable, but the tone carried respect. "You have done what we thought impossible. Your lessons, your presence, and your guidance have proven that courage and wisdom can coexist with order. My child and many others have learned what humans value. The galaxy is listening." Evan nodded quietly. "Humans survive because we act, we care, and we never stop trying. That's all we've ever done, and apparently it's contagious." The child ran to Evan, eyes bright. "Evan, they listened, they saw the value of what we do. The resistant adults, they're thinking differently now. They're even helping the younglings." Evan smiled, a rare warmth spreading across his face. "Exactly, that's the human way. Show, don't force, help, don't dominate, and never give up." In the days that followed, the ripple effect of human ideas continued to grow. Colonies that had been isolated and rigidly controlled began experimenting with collaboration, empathy, and problem-solving. Adults who had been resistant slowly accepted that change did not mean chaos, it meant progress. Human stories had sparked courage, and courage had inspired action. Evan observed quietly, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. He had come as a storyteller, a simple human sharing tales meant for children. He had never imagined that these stories could touch an entire civilization. And yet, here he was, watching societies change without a single weapon fired, without a single order enforced. The galaxy was listening, not to fleets or empires, but to courage, kindness, and perseverance. The child ran to him again, holding a small device. "Evan, look, messages from other colonies. They're asking for help, guidance, ideas. They want to learn how humans solve problems. Evan took the device, scrolling through hundreds of requests. His heart swelled with pride and awe. Humans had not commanded armies, but they had inspired an empire through values alone. This is incredible, he said softly. Humans endure, humans inspire, and humans act. That's why our stories travel farther than we think. The alien adult placed a hand on the child's shoulder. Your guidance, human, has permanently altered the course of our civilization. We feared what we did not understand, and now we see that what we feared was a gift. You have given us hope, courage, and a new way to survive. That is a power greater than any weapon. Evan nodded, humbled. I never meant to change a civilization. I just told stories, but stories, they carry ideas, and ideas can travel farther than any ship or fleet. The child looked up at him with bright eyes. Do you think humans will keep changing the galaxy? Evan smiled faintly. We always do, not because we want glory, but because we act, we care, and we never give up. That's what makes humans human. And apparently it inspires others, even across galaxies. Word spread throughout the alien empire. Adults who had once resisted began mentoring the younglings, adopting some human principles while retaining their own traditions. Society shifted subtly, blending curiosity, courage, and empathy with discipline and order. Evan watched from the observation deck as ships coordinated more efficiently, colonies solved problems faster, and a sense of cooperation replaced fear. Harris visited him once more, shaking his head in amazement. Cole, I can't believe it. You didn't fight. You didn't conquer. You just showed them humans, and it worked. You changed an entire civilization with stories and actions alone. Evan shrugged, exhausted but satisfied. That's what humans do. We endure, we inspire, and we act. We don't always get recognition, but we keep moving forward. That's enough. The child approached one last time, holding a small holographic model of the galaxy. Evan, will you come back someday to tell more stories? He smiled, placing a hand on the child's shoulder. Someday, yes, but remember this, you already have everything you need. Courage, kindness, curiosity, these are human traits, but they can belong to anyone willing to act. The alien adult nodded. We will return home now. But know this, humans have left a mark far greater than we imagined. Your courage, your ideas, your perseverance, they will echo across generations. You have proven that even the smallest human actions can reshape worlds. As the alien ship departed, Evan watched the stars, reflecting on the journey. What had begun as a simple act, telling stories for children, had become a catalyst for change across galaxies. Humans were small in the vast universe, yet their influence could reach unimaginable distances. Courage, empathy, and persistence were their true weapons, and they were more powerful than any fleet or empire. Evan returned to his station, sitting quietly at his desk. The stars outside shimmered with possibility, and he felt the quiet hum of the universe listening. Somewhere far away, the child continued to share what it had learned, guiding peers, influencing leaders, and inspiring change. Humanity's reach was subtle, invisible, yet undeniable. He whispered to himself, a soft smile on his face, humans endure, humans inspire, humans act, and that is how we change the galaxy. For the first time, Evan understood the full weight of his stories. They had not only entertained or taught, they had sparked courage, inspired action, and transformed an entire civilization. Humanity's power did not lie in weapons, politics, or domination. It lay in the ability to care, to persist, and to act in the face of uncertainty. The galaxy was listening, and for once it was hearing humans, not as conquerors or invaders, but as teachers of courage, kindness, and resilience. Evan leaned back in his chair, letting the hum of the station lull him into a peaceful silence. The universe was vast, filled with danger and mystery, yet one truth remained. Humans endure, humans inspire, humans act. And sometimes that is enough to change worlds. Somewhere far across the stars, the child continued to think, to ask, to act. And in every choice, every solution, and every courageous step, the ripple of humanity's influence grew stronger. Evan closed his eyes, a faint smile playing on his lips. The story had begun on a small station with small acts of courage. Now it stretched across galaxies, a quiet testament to the enduring power of humans. And in that moment he knew, humanity had not only survived, it had inspired, shaped, and touched the universe in ways no one had ever expected.